This gentleman wrote a book about virtual reality, so we're going to assume that he's going to share some information about virtual reality with us. I'd like to invite Alan Craig from NCSA to speak.
Hi everyone, I'm Alan Craig. I'm from both the Institute for Computing and Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences and also the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. I just wanted to tell you kind of something that I thought as when I got the call inviting me to speak here tonight. They said, we want you to come and talk about visualization. And I've been doing visualization for probably as long as some of you guys have been alive. But I said, okay, that'll be great. I do this all the time. I've got some great demos I can show. And they said, well, really, there's not going to be a way to show any demos, you know. And so I thought, well, I can bring my laptop and we can project a lot of good pictures. And they said, well, really, there's no way to show your pictures. So I thought, okay, what can we do here? So the notion of talking about visualization in the absence of visual imagery made me think about something that I've been interested in for a very long time, and that is multisensory perception, multisensory representation. And tonight, in the absence of being able to show visuals, what we do have is audio. And so this is our medium of communication that we have tonight. There's some visual component, there's the whole room, there's people you're sitting with, I'm standing up here, but we're really opening up our ears as an information channel. And I think that's really important when we look at analyzing data, is to say, how is the best way to represent this data? I can transform this into visual imagery. I can transform it into audio signals. Of course, right there between those two, I have millions of different options of how I want to map that information. I can map it into the sense of touch. Surgeons use sense of touch all the time as they're trying to analyze what's going on in the human body. So when we were in grade school, we learned about our 5 senses. There's our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, and our sense of touch. But really, we have a lot more senses than just those 5. We've got our own body's sense of proprioception. If I close my eyes and move my hand, I know where my hand is because of my own body's sense of proprioception. And so some of the things that I'm doing in the area of virtual reality and also in augmented reality is exploring how can I exploit my body's natural way of interacting with information. How can I determine what are the best ways to map information for the best communication for whatever purpose that's for? If I'm trying to analyze something or if I'm trying to teach it to someone else, and then how do I actually manifest that in a system that I, the human being, can interact with visually, audio, touch. You all have had a picture taken of you with a flash camera. You know how you see your spot after that? That's because our eyes have this sense of latent, there's the latent image on there. So very rapidly changing light, that's not a good way for very high frequency information to gather that in our eyes. As a matter of fact, the old radar systems, with the green screens, they exploited that sense of persistence on a CRT tube because it would leave it on there long enough for our eyes to be able to interpret that. Our ears, on the other hand, can sense very rapid changes. And so often it might be important to think about how can we represent something in audio in a way that we can understand, that has a very high frequency to it that our ears can perceive. Something I don't know if you stop and think about, we've got eyelids, right? We don't have earlids. So our ears are always open, and they're open all around us. I'm looking at you. There could be a tiger right behind me, and I have no idea. But if I hear a growl, my oral system is going to tell me to turn around and look, and whoa, now my eyes tell me what's going on back there. So those are some of the sorts of things that I'm interested in. Just another example of our body's proprioception and sort of different ways that we can interact with information. If I hold a joystick and move something some amount of distance on a screen, and then I try and move it back without seeing it, I don't know really how far did I send that thing, how much do I need to bring it back. But if I close my eyes and I step over here, my own body tells me I can get right back to where I was because I've taken in all that data, all that information. My body has transmitted that to my brain. I've figured out about this three-dimensional world that I live in based on my vision, all my different senses, and I'm able to make sense of the world. We're three-dimensional creatures. Most computer screens, cell phone displays, movie screens, this is changing, are two-dimensional interfaces. So how do we interact with a two-dimensional screen? How do we interact with a three-dimensional screen? The three-dimensional movies that you're seeing now, I don't know if you've observed people who are watching something in 3D. What's the first impulse they have to do? They reach out to see if it's there because our eyes are telling us something that we're getting other cues that aren't necessarily coinciding with that. So we reach out to try another sense to see if that's there. And in that particular situation, they say seeing is believing, touching is knowing. And so I'm really interested in how we can combine all these different senses, channels of information, so that we can interact with information with or without a computer mediating that information, and how we can exploit it to greater understanding and communication.